Welcome everybody, my name's Dr. Jason W. Morrison, Theologist, New South Wales, Australia, and welcome to my talk on how to awaken. I don't feel comfortable. Something is wrong. Part 1. Let's go. Now, a lot of people in the Jehovah Witnesses and Christendom are suffering with doubt, and it's not a doubt that has anything to do with what the Lord Jesus Christ has done or his finished work on the cross. It's possibly an internal doubt about the organization they're in or what they're seeing, what they're hearing. And they're asking themselves, is something wrong or is this right? But aren't sure how to measure it. How do you measure if you're seeing things properly or not? How do you know if the people around you are being genuine or not? Well, let's read the story, the record of Blind Bartimaeus in Mark 10, starting in verse 46, and you make up your own mind about what a person should do to be able to awaken so that they don't lose their personality and character, their identity, or their ability to critically think. You don't want to lose your ability to critically and constructively think. And we're going to see here a story about a blind man. Jesus heals blind Bartimaeus. Mark 10, verse 46. Now they came to Jericho. As he went out of Jericho with his disciples and a great multitude, just let me say the disciples battled with a lot of things that Jesus did. And ultimately, they got a lot of things wrong. But they did critically think. And that's something that we cannot lose. Now, a lot of critical thinking can be regarded as rebellion or apostasy. That's nonsense. One of the liberties of life is to be able to think with the mind that God's given you in a constructive and wholesome way. And that means not being blind. It means being able to, let's just quickly, I think it's fair to show Hebrews chapter 5 and verse 12 at this point, spiritual immaturity. And he says, for though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you, again, the first principles of the oracles of God. Now, what might they be? Jesus Christ and him crucified, which is what he was talking about here. Just go back to verse 9. And having been perfected, he became the author of eternal salvation to all who obey him. Now, what's obey him mean? Love your neighbour as yourself. Because, see, you've got to string all this together. What was Jesus' new commandment? Just to love your neighbour as yourself. To do no harm to yourself or anybody else. Okay, that's the gist of this. That's the oracles of God. And you have become to need milk and not solid food. And this is why there are so many people muddled up with all these demands and requirements, and they've lost sight of the fact that Jesus Christ has done all they needed to be done for their eternal salvation. He's the author of their eternal salvation, only simply by believing, and they've got all these religious requirements and rules, and they've lost their way. Just lost, and so they're all bound up and twisted up. I know, because I've been there. For everyone who partakes only of milk now is unskilled. Now, why are they unskilled? This all talks about, this meaning here is research. Critical research of what you're being shown and taught so that you can have alignment with the truth. Not with what somebody's telling you, or even though it may be right, you still have to critically research what you're being told. The Bible's a minefield for misdirection, be it intentional or not. And this is why these people were still stumbling around on milk instead of solid food. They didn't have the solid foundation underneath them, which is the Lord Jesus Christ. They weren't resting on that. They were lost in their rules and obligations, which were false. So if you're only a partaker of milk, if you're unsure about what Jesus did, you're unskilled. It's spiritually unskilled. And you will fall to deception. In the word of righteousness, he is still a babe, but solid food belongs to those who are of full age. That's people that have an ability to hear things and to be able to think individually and come to the reason of the truth. Being able, look, those who by reason of use. Now the reason of use of what? The reasonable use of your mind to have their senses exercised enough to be able to discern good and evil. The majority of Christians don't have the courage to do that. They're scared, they're frightened, they don't have the time to dig deep. But here in Mark chapter 10 verse 46, Jesus is walking down the road with his disciples, who were probably at this point in the same state, even though they'd seen miracles, more miracles that could be written in all the books of the world, John said at the end of his gospel. And there was a great multitude. And then there's blind Bartimaeus. Now, how many blind Bartimaeuses do you know? I know one. Me. The son of Timaeus. Now, this brings me to a point for people that are born into religions. And I want to share a testimony, if I may. You can take it or leave it. The church I was born into started off very well. The minister threw us straight into prison ministry, straight from the outset. I started a street ministry and away we went. The minister had a wonderful son who I used to surf with out on Foresters Beach Reef. Became acquainted with him through surfing, and him and his wife led me to know Jesus. And it wasn't easy for them, I'll tell you. I put up a fight, but I'll share that in my testimony. Miraculously saved. Well, they were grooming the son to become the pastor and to help the father. But things weren't going very well in the church. There was arguments among new believers and questions as to whether women should be ministering, because the minister's wife liked to get up there and spruik. And it caused terrible tension in their private home life, because I saw it. I was there. This is in the early stages of this church. But to the credit of the pastor and his wife, they battled it out. He's now dead. He died quite early. Whether the ministry had something to do with that or not is up to personal opinion, but I honestly think it took a toll on this man. He was a very gentle man. They groomed the son to follow in his footsteps, but the son said no, determinedly, and he dropped out. He dropped right out. He went through 2 divorces. He had a terrible run. This bloke, he was a beautiful bloke, but he just had a terrible run. Now, why do I say that? I say that for these people that are born into these organisations that haven't got the courage to say no. And they're just blindly led, right? Blindly led along through a life, a miserable, rotten life, because they didn't have the courage to say no to their parents. The problem with a lot of these organisations is, and not in all cases, but if you say no to the parents, then you're saying no to their organisation, and the next thing you know, you're sitting there on your own and nobody wants to know you. It's not just in the Jehovah Witnesses, even though they're the worst for it by the sound of it. People are scared when it comes to their faith and religion, because they're frightened that something's going to happen between them and God if they try and help someone that's unruly. Even though usually the unruly person's just looking for their independence and freedom, which they're perfectly entitled to. So for you people that have been born into these organisations and you're asking yourself questions, don't be blind to how you feel. You've only got one life, and it's your life, nobody else's. You've got to live it. So blind Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, sat by the road begging. Now, how many people, honestly, are begging inside for some answers? Just some common sense answers. Well, I got news for you. This guy was blind and he knew what the answer was. He's sitting by the road begging. Nobody really could have cared less, because if they did, Why was he sitting by the road begging? Where was his parents at this place? They were probably dead. This is what I'm trying to say. You've got one life. When your parents are gone, it's oh, goodness gracious, come on. The sand in the hourglass, it's running out. Don't end up a beggar, for goodness sake, please. The Jehovah Witnesses teach people, and I do have to say I was in a local church here, a big one, and the pastor's wife got up there and criticised education, and I never went back. I never went back. Thank God I never went back. To people teaching people to be ignorant, that spirituality is more important than a profession. They're all equally important. Probably education more so. If it wasn't, why do people only go to church once a week? Because you've got to work, don't you? And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, this guy was blind as a bat, like many of you. But when he heard about Jesus of Nazareth, he could see, couldn't he? His mind gave him the ability to see, and so should you. You've got to lay it down and go, well, I'm hearing all about Jesus of Nazareth. Now I've got to research personally and find out who he really is, because this guy was as blind as a bat, but he had ears. He must have been hearing what was going on before Jesus got there. And my goodness me, when Jesus got there, who did he cry out to? He began to cry out and say, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. That's something that we all need to get to the place of. The whole central point of Christianity and all the rest of it, of this book, is Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And as soon as you find that in yourself, you're going to come up against opposition, and it's usually the people around you, the closest around you, because everybody's not sure. Not everyone is sure about who Jesus of Nazareth is. I mean, if you say to some people, well, Jesus was God manifest in the flesh, they look at you like you're an apostate or you've got rocks in your head. But the mainstream Christianity don't. They know exactly who Jesus is. Then they warned him to be quiet. And this is what's going to happen to a lot of you Jehovah Witnesses when you start to critically think. I'm showing you the footsteps to being awakened, and I'm comparing you to a blind man. Now, how blind are you? How disquieted, how numbed is your mind? Are you going to critically think and get through all this and get it right with Jesus? Fancy being told Jesus is Michael the Archangel. Don't you think Michael would be rolling round up there going, no, 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 how could they have come up with this? Or Jesus would just be shrugging his shoulders going, who come up with that? And you would sit there or stand there and believe it? Why? Because you're blind. You haven't done your critical research, have you? You've only got to type on the internet, is Jesus Michael the Archangel, and you'll get thousands of posts proving that it's not. But if you don't research, you look, I could say Gabriel was Michael the Archangel who became Jesus of Nazareth if I had been in that organisation in the early days, and they'd all believe it. Because the people didn't do their critical research. Then they warned him to be quiet. But guess what? Guess what? Not this bloke. He cried out all the more, and that's what you need to do. If your mind is singing out to you and people are trying to shut you down from finding the answers, no, just go harder. Just go harder. Don't let people get in your way. You've got to put your mind at rest. Don't just settle on unsureties or things that you know may be wrong. Do your research. And on that note, this is the end of part 1. How to awaken. Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like, maybe even comment. If you watched it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.